Hello, this is Bond Report, and this is number BAFA 14, Tales from the Front. We were talking about KOLs last time, key opinion leaders. There are various other translations. And this is me. I have been a KOL, and I find myself thrust upon my own personal experiences as KOL and, going to different towns and things. So I found it true in my own case, straight out of Gilbert and Sullivan, and I've used this. Instead of a modern major general, you are statements unreliable, uncheckable, and nebulous. I am the very model of a condescending KOL. Oh, it was true in my own case. A lot of the time you can be manipulated through your vanity, and I was. You can say, vanity dies hard. Me and Robert Louis Stevenson, some obstinate cases that outlives the man. Now that since I'm alive, I can't see if that's true in my own case, but I've got enough an ego, it probably easily is true. And you can be manipulated very easily, or I can be, through vanity and things like that. You like to get up in front of people and expound on. When you get up there and talk about more or less anything, it's H.L. Mencken talking about all men are frauds. The only difference between them is that some of them admit it. I don't admit it. H.L. didn't either. He said, I myself deny it. It's in the book called the Christomathy, but it's all men are frauds. Now, one of the other reasons to be a KOL, which is interesting, is you do hear some new things that are coming up, some new ideas, sensations, equipment, variations on a theme. You travel in a good group that's got good ideas. Once again, 13 years old, said P.G. O'Rourke, every aspect of the universe can change. Ask any 13-year-olds, and how true that is. Ricky Gervais, the best piece of advice I ever gave when you're intimidated to get up there to give a KOL talk, the best piece of advice I ever received, nobody else knows what they're doing either. That's a morale builder of ever. Katharine Hepburn talked about the best damned direction, her words, were what I received on The African Queen. She said, I was struggling with my character. I pestered John Huston for the better part of a week to tell me more. And I just said I didn't understand my character. John Huston stopped walking, looked at me and said, put a high society smile on your face and act like Mrs. Roosevelt. She said, that's the best damn piece of directing I ever heard. And you watch that movie, you can see that. You wait, you will find it, the IRS actually puts this in their tax auditor's manual, you'll find it a distinct help if you look as if you know what you're doing. And that's sound advice. I didn't have a picture of an IRS tax auditor one looks like, so I approximated one there. That's, of course, South Park, but they're as close to the devil as anybody else. And once again, Bette Midler said this, but it's also true. You're dealing with that. I never really know how much of what I say is true. That's true in everybody's case, whether they admit it or not, like H.L. Mencken's guys. You try to keep your talk short. Here's a favorite from Mark Twain of mine. Very few sinners are saved after the first 20 minutes of a sermon. How true that is. You encounter these audiences, Michel de Montaigne talks about them, obstinacy and heat of opinion. And sometimes the heat of opinion is felt to be the proof of its truth, which is the opposite of the truth. Is there anything so certain, resolute, disdainful, contemplative, grave and serious as an ass? Not that I've found. And you can talk to a few. And there'll be guys who actually seem to be proud of this. Edith Sitwell said this the best. She said, I am patient with ignorance, which she may or may not have been, but not with those who are proud of it. And there's people who think that normally what they call common sense can be ignorance. Now, if you're a KOL, you're not only getting your vanity gratified, but you know enough not, you're getting paid for this. And so the products of that company are going to be that much better. You aren't going to actually lie, but you're going to shade things their way, and it helps, and in my own case, it helps to believe that that's the truth, that they really do have these things, and that has helped. And you get working with that particular company and things like that. Mamie Van Doren said, I've married a few people I shouldn't have, but haven't we all, Also with Howard Stern, he was having a contract dispute with radio things, said I'm worth every penny. And that was true in my own case. Isaac Newton said that he advanced where he was, standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, in refractive surgery, where I gave my talks, mostly we stand on each other's feet. So I never felt like standing on the shoulders of giants with that. You find this out when Molière said this, there is nothing more distressing for an artist than to have to show himself off before fools, see his work exposed to the criticism of the vulgar and ignorance. And you're sitting in there, you give a talk in a local thing, and it's the Molotov cocktail lounge, and they're just waiting to throw that champagne bottle in there full of gasoline, ask about our famous assholes flambe with the fire thing going there. They never get a picture of James Watson where he doesn't just look just a little crazy, and this was as good as I could do. But you find out the truth of James Watson saying this. He was 24 when the Double Helix book came out, and he said a goodly number of scientists, not only narrow-minded and dull, but actually rather stupid. There's some truth. Once again, obstinacy in the heat of nature, to repeat some Montaigne. And once again, most, perhaps even most, confuse their opinions with knowledge. And the more heat the opinion is held with, and the more emotion the opinion is filled with, the more profound the knowledge is felt to be. And this is not correct thinking. George H.W., he said he had opinions of his own, wouldn't be prudent. Strong opinions, he said, but I don't always agree with them, whatever the hell that might mean. You do enjoy some tact. Madame de Staël said this. As you're talking to some of these guys, you're out there getting asked some things and wondering what the hell their practice is like and what their patients must be like, you're thinking, and Madame de Staël did it, politeness is the art of choosing among one's thoughts. You find that out to be true. Steinbeck said it the best also. If you're getting talks they're giving a review on you, unless a viewer has the courage to give you perfect everything, unqualified praise, ignore the bastard. And it wasn't long. They wrote, I'm trying to think of the guy, he didn't live very long, and I'm blocking on his name, lived to be 32, the days of wine and roses. They were never long, the days of swine and Porsches, when you're getting money for talking and your opinions are hot and people want to talk to you about that stuff. I like that thing so much, I two-slided it. Also, you'll find with Nicholas Nassim Taleb, the learning of life is about what to avoid, things you can avoid. I am flying with a friend of mine one time, and I learned another exercise in English in having to talk to people when you're traveling KOL. The guy's name was Joe Rigsby, hell of a good guy, and he had landed the plane that I'm flying with him in. He was a very good pilot, beautifully. And I said, Joe, that was a very good landing. And he said, that was a great landing. I said to Joe, that seems a little immodest. And he said, no, they'll teach you this in flight school. A good landing is when everybody walks away. And a great landing is when you can use the airplane again. Told me that. Evidently, that was the common parlance in there. But being a KOL in general, Norm Van Brocklin here, pro football is the toughest, easy money that there is. So it's tough, easy money, and I'm going to close on that. That's my KOL experience. Thank you very much. Please subscribe.